One night, during a devastating fire in Los Angeles, a homeless man risked everything to save a child trapped inside a burning house. But when the girl's father, a wealthy millionaire, offered a generous reward, the homeless hero's response shocked everyone. What happened next not only changed his life, but also shook the very foundations of the entire city. The relentless California sun beat down on the cracked pavement of Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles. John Reeves, a man in his late 40s with weathered features and haunted eyes, sat with his back against the grimy wall of an abandoned storefront. His clothes, once sturdy workwear, now hung in tatters on his gaunt frame. A battered cardboard sign rested against his legs, its faded message a silent plea: anything helps. God bless. Streams of people flowed past, their eyes averted, their pace quickening as they approached. John had become adept at reading their body language, the slight turn of the shoulders, the sudden fascination with their phones. He was invisible, a human blind spot in their carefully crafted worlds. A young woman in a crisp business suit approached, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm on the sidewalk. For a moment her eyes met John's, and he saw a flicker of recognition, not of him specifically, but of his humanity. She paused, reaching into her purse. "Here," she said, dropping a few coins into the cup beside him. "Get yourself something to eat." John's voice, rough from disuse, croaked out a reply. "Thank you, miss. God bless you." The woman hesitated, then asked, How did you end up here?" A bitter smile crossed John's face. "Life, miss. Life has a way of knocking you down when you least expect it." As the woman hurried away, John's mind drifted back to a time when he stood tall, his calloused hands a testament to honest work, and his heart full of pride. He had been John Reeves, foreman at McKinley Construction, respected by his peers and loved by his family. The memory of his daughter Emma's laughter echoed in his mind, a phantom of happiness from a life that now seemed like a distant dream. It had been a day like any other on the construction site of the new Wilshire Grand Center. John was overseeing the installation of steel beams on the 50th floor, the Los Angeles skyline sprawling beneath them. He remembered the rush of adrenaline, the satisfaction of seeing the building take shape under his guidance. "Watch it, Mike," John called out, noticing a beam swinging precariously. "That load's not secure." He rushed forward, pushing his colleague out of harm's way as the massive steel beam came crashing down. The searing pain that shot through his right shoulder was instantaneous and blinding. The world spun, and then there was darkness. When John awoke in the hospital, the doctor's words fell like hammer blows. Severe nerve damage, limited mobility, unlikely to regain full function. The implications were clear. His days as a construction worker were over. At first, Charlotte, his wife of 20 years, had been supportive. "We'll get through this, John," she'd said, squeezing his hand. "We always do." But as the weeks turned into months and the medical bills piled up, the strain began to show. John's disability checks weren't enough to cover their mortgage, let alone Emma's college fund. He watched helplessly as Charlotte's smile became forced, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and resentment. One evening, after another tense day of fruitless job searching, John found Charlotte in their bedroom, a suitcase open on the bed. "I can't do this anymore, John," she said, her voice breaking. "Emma and we need stability. We need a future." "Charlotte, please," John pleaded, his good arm reaching out to her. "We can figure this out. I'll find something. Anything." But his words fell on deaf ears. That night, the sound of the front door closing behind Charlotte and Emma echoed through the empty house, a finalizing thud to the life John had known. In the months that followed, John's world unraveled with terrifying speed. Without an income, he lost the house. His truck was repossessed. Old friends, uncomfortable with his new circumstances, gradually stopped calling. The bottle became his solace, numbing the pain of loss and the sharp edges of a reality he couldn't seem to escape. Now, 2 years later, John's home was wherever he could find shelter for the night. The streets of Los Angeles, once the backdrop to his success, had become the stage for his daily struggle for survival. As John sat on Figueroa Street, his thoughts were interrupted by the wail of sirens in the distance. He looked up, noticing for the first time the haze that hung over the city. The acrid smell of smoke tickled his nostrils, carried on a hot, dry wind that whispered of danger. "Another fire," muttered a passerby, his eyes glued to his phone. "They're saying it's bad this time. Might reach the city." John's heart quickened. Wildfires were an ever-present threat in Southern California, but this year had been particularly brutal. The homeless community, always vulnerable, faced an even greater risk when the fires came close to the city. As the day wore on, more sirens pierced the air. The usual bustle of downtown Los Angeles took on a frantic edge. People hurried past, their conversations a mix of worry and speculation. "They're evacuating Bel Air," John overheard a woman say into her phone. "Can you believe it? The fire's jumping the freeway." The mention of Bel Air stirred something in John. He remembered working on a mansion there years ago, marveling at the opulence even as he took pride in his contribution to it. Now those same homes were threatened by the approaching inferno. As the sun began to set, casting an eerie orange glow through the smoky haze, John gathered his meager possessions. He needed to find a safe place for the night, away from the path of the fire. But as he stood wincing at the familiar ache in his shoulder, a realization struck him. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of purpose. He may have lost everything, but he still had his knowledge, his experience. In a city gripped by panic, those skills might just make a difference. An elderly man stumbled on the curb nearby, his arms full of hastily packed belongings. Without thinking, John rushed to steady him. "Easy there, sir," John said, his voice gravelly but kind. "Let me help you with that." The old man looked at John, surprise and gratitude mingling in his rheumy eyes. "Thank you, son. I don't know where to go. They said to evacuate, but I don't have anywhere." John nodded, understanding all too well the fear of displacement. "I know a shelter not far from here. It's safe from the fire's path. I can show you the way if you'd like." As they walked together, John felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The city might be burning, but here, in this moment, he had a purpose. He was needed. The night ahead would be long and fraught with danger. The Santa Ana winds were picking up, driving the flames ever closer to the heart of Los Angeles. But for John Reeves, former construction foreman turned homeless survivor, a new chapter was beginning. In the face of this inferno, he would find redemption or die trying. Little did John know that the firestorm approaching Los Angeles would not only threaten the city he once helped build, but also become the crucible in which his life would be forever changed. As he guided the elderly man towards safety, the first tendrils of smoke began to curl around the skyscrapers of downtown, heralding the arrival of a danger that would test John's resilience, courage, and humanity in ways he could never have imagined. The stage was set for a battle not just against the elements, but against the very circumstances that had brought John to his knees. In the coming days, the City of Angels would become a hellscape of fire and ash, and in its midst, one man would find the chance to rise from the ashes of his former life and rekindle the flame of hope he thought had been extinguished forever. The following morning, Los Angeles awoke to a sky tinted an ominous orange. Ash fell like dirty snow, coating cars and buildings in a gritty layer. The acrid smell of smoke permeated every corner of the city, a constant reminder of the approaching danger. John stirred from his makeshift bed in a secluded corner of MacArthur Park. He had spent the night guiding people to shelters, his intimate knowledge of the city's hidden spaces proving invaluable. Now, as he blinked away the sleep from his eyes, the gravity of the situation hit him anew. The park, usually bustling with joggers and families, was eerily quiet. Only a handful of homeless individuals remained, those too stubborn or too weary to seek safer ground. Among them was Maria, an elderly woman John had befriended over the past year. "Buenos dias, John," Maria called out, her voice raspy from the smoke. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" John nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so, Maria. We should think about moving to one of the emergency shelters downtown." Maria shook her head stubbornly. "This is my home, John. I'm not leaving." Their conversation was interrupted by the crackling of a nearby radio. A group of homeless men huddled around it, their faces etched with concern as they listened to the latest news. The Topanga fire has now merged with the La Tuna Canyon blaze, creating a massive fire front that's advancing rapidly towards the city. Mandatory evacuations have been extended to include parts of Bel Air, Brentwood, and the Hollywood Hills. John's heart sank. The situation was escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. He thought of the mansions in those affluent neighborhoods, remembering the jobs he had worked on in better times. The contrast between those opulent homes and his current circumstances struck him like a physical blow. Miles away in a sprawling Bel Air estate, William Hartley paced anxiously in his home office. The wall-mounted TV displayed a map of Los Angeles, large swathes marked in angry red to indicate the fire's spread. "Daddy?" A small voice came from the doorway. Isabella, William's 7-year-old daughter, stood there clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Are we going to have to leave?" William forced a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're safe here. Why don't you go help your mom pack a few things, just in case?" As Isabella scampered off, William's wife, Chloe, entered the room. Her normally perfectly coiffed blonde hair was disheveled, and worry lines creased her forehead. "Will, maybe we should leave now," Chloe said, her voice tight with anxiety. "The roads will be jammed if we wait any longer." William shook his head. "We have the best private fire protection money can buy, Chloe. Besides, they'll get this under control soon." They always do. Back in MacArthur Park, John had managed to convince Maria and a few others to relocate to a shelter. As they made their way through the smoky streets, John couldn't help but reflect on how his life had changed. "You know, Maria," he said as they walked, "I used to build homes in neighborhoods like Bel Air. Now I can't even afford a cardboard box in Skid Row." Maria patted his arm sympathetically. "Life is strange, mi amigo, but you have a good heart. That's worth more than any mansion." As they approached the shelter, a commotion caught their attention. A group of people were arguing with the shelter staff, their voices rising in panic and frustration. "What do you mean you're full?" one man shouted. "Where are we supposed to go?" John stepped forward, his instincts as a former foreman kicking in. "Hey, let's calm down here. What's the problem?" A harried-looking shelter worker turned to John. "We're at capacity. The fire's displaced more people than we anticipated. We're trying to find alternative locations, but..." John nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He turned to the crowd, raising his voice to be heard over the growing clamor. "Listen up, everyone. I know you're scared, but we need to stay calm. I know this area like the back of my hand. There are other places we can go that are safe from the fire. If you're willing to trust me, I can lead you there." For a moment, silence fell over the group. Then slowly people began to nod in agreement. John felt a weight settle on his shoulders. These people were now looking to him for guidance and protection. As John organized the group and began leading them to safety, across town the Hartley family was facing a crisis of their own. "The power's out," Chloe called out, her voice echoing through their cavernous home. "Will, I really think we need to leave now." William stared out the window, watching as the horizon glowed an angry red. The wind had picked up, carrying embers that danced menacingly in the air. He realized with a sinking feeling that his confidence had been misplaced. "All right," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "Pack what you can. We're leaving." As the Hartleys hurriedly prepared to evacuate, John continued to guide his group through the smoky streets of Los Angeles. The contrast between his current role and his past life weighed heavily on his mind. "You seem to know what you're doing," remarked a young man named Alex who had joined the group. "Were you in the military or something?" John shook his head. "Construction foreman, spent 20 years building this city. Now I'm just trying to help people survive in it." Alex looked at him with newfound respect. "What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" John sighed, the familiar ache of his past rising in his chest. "Life, kid. One day you're on top of the world. The next, well, you're here. Accident on the job. Lost my career, my family, everything." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud explosion in the distance. The group huddled closer together, fear palpable in the air. "What was that?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "Probably a transformer blowing," John replied, trying to keep his voice calm. "The fire must be getting closer to the power lines. We need to pick up the pace." As they hurried through the streets, John's mind raced. He knew they needed to find shelter soon, but with the city in chaos and resources stretched thin, their options were limited. Meanwhile, the Hartleys found themselves stuck in gridlocked traffic as they attempted to flee Bel Air. The evacuation order, once voluntary, had become mandatory, and now the winding roads of the affluent neighborhood were choked with expensive cars carrying frightened families. "Daddy, I'm scared," Isabella whimpered from the back seat. William reached back to squeeze her hand. "It's going to be okay, sweetie, we'll be safe soon." But as he looked at the line of unmoving cars ahead and the encroaching wall of flame visible in his rearview mirror, William wasn't so sure. For the first time in his life, his wealth and influence meant nothing in the face of nature's fury. Back in the city, John's group had found temporary refuge in an abandoned warehouse. As people settled in, Trying to make themselves as comfortable as possible on the cold concrete floor, John took stock of their supplies. "We've got enough water for a day, maybe 2 if we're careful," he muttered to himself. "Food's going to be a problem, though." A commotion near the entrance caught his attention. A newcomer had arrived, a middle-aged woman with a wild look in her eyes. "You've got to help me," she cried out. "My son, he's still out there. He wouldn't leave our dog behind." John felt his heart constrict. The thought of a child in danger stirred something deep within him, memories of his own daughter flashing through his mind. "Where?" he asked, his voice firm. "Where did you last see him?" The woman pointed vaguely eastward. "Echo Park. We live near the lake. Please, you have to find him." John looked around at the group he'd brought to safety, then back at the desperate mother. He knew he couldn't abandon these people, but the thought of a child in danger gnawed at him. "I'll go." Alex stepped forward. "You've shown me the safe routes. I can find the kid and bring him back." John hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but you're not going alone. Maria, can you keep an eye on things here?" The elderly woman nodded solemnly. "Be careful, mijijo, both of you." As John and Alex prepared to head out into the smoke-filled streets, the gravity of the situation settled over the group. They were no longer just strangers thrown together by circumstance. They had become a community, united in their struggle for survival. John turned to address the group one last time before leaving. "Listen up, everyone. I know you're scared. Hell, I'm scared too. But we're going to get through this. Look out for each other. We're all we've got right now." With those words, John and Alex stepped out into the hazy, orange-tinted world. The roar of the approaching fire was now audible, a constant, terrifying reminder of the danger they faced. As they made their way towards Echo Park, John couldn't help but reflect on the bizarre turn his life had taken. Just days ago, he had been invisible, a man that society had forgotten. Now people were looking to him for leadership and hope. "You know," Alex said as they navigated the deserted streets, "my old man used to say that true character shows in a crisis. I think he'd have a lot of respect for you, John." John felt a lump form in his throat. "Your old man sounds like a wise guy. Mine, well, he left when I was kid. Always told myself I'd be different, be there for my own child no matter what." "You have kids?" Alex asked, surprise evident in his voice. John nodded, his eyes misting over. "A daughter, Emma. Haven't seen her in 2 years. She'd be about your age now." Their conversation was cut short as they rounded a corner and came face to face with a wall of flames. The fire had jumped ahead, cutting off their path to Echo Park. "Shit," John muttered, his mind racing. "We need to find another way around." As they backtracked, searching for an alternate route, John's thoughts turned to the Hartleys and the other wealthy residents of Bel Air. He wondered how they were faring, if their money and influence could protect them from the inferno that was consuming the city without discrimination. Little did he know that at that very moment, the Hartleys were facing a crisis of their own. Their attempt to evacuate had been thwarted by the gridlocked traffic, and now they found themselves trapped in their car, the fire advancing relentlessly towards them. William looked at his wife and daughter, fear etched on their faces, and made a decision. "We're going to have to make a run for it," he said, his voice shaking. "There's a shopping center about a mile down the hill. If we can make it there, we'll be safe." Chloe looked at him in disbelief. "A mile? In this smoke? We'll never make it." But they had no choice. As they abandoned their luxury SUV and began their desperate journey on foot, William realized that all his wealth, all his success, meant nothing in the face of this disaster. For the first time in his life, he felt truly helpless. Back in the city, John and Alex had finally found a way around the fire line. As they approached Echo Park, the devastation became more apparent. Entire blocks had been reduced to smoldering ruins, the air thick with smoke and ash. "Hello?" Alex called out, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "Is anyone here? We're here to help." For a moment, there was only the crackling of flames and the distant wail of sirens. Then faintly they heard it, a child's cry followed by a dog's bark. "This way!" John shouted, leading Alex towards the sound. They found the boy, no more than 10 years old, huddled under a partially collapsed porch, clutching a terrified golden retriever. "It's okay, kid," John said softly, kneeling down to the boy's level. "We're here to help. Your mom sent us." The boy looked up, his face streaked with tears and soot. "Buddy wouldn't leave," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't leave him behind." John felt his heart constrict. He thought of Emma, of the times he had comforted her when she was scared. Without hesitation, He reached out and scooped up both the boy and the dog. "Let's get you both out of here," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. As they made their way back through the burning city, John couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought him to this moment. He, a homeless man that society had discarded, was now responsible for the lives of others. The fire continued to rage, consuming everything in its path, but in its wake, a different kind of fire was kindling, one of human resilience, compassion, and hope. As John carried the boy to safety, he felt for the first time in years that his life had purpose. Little did he know that this was just the beginning. The true test of his character and the event that would forever change his life was yet to come. As the fire bore down on Los Angeles, fate was preparing to bring John face to face with the Hartleys in a moment that would redefine all of their lives. The night was far from over, and the City of Angels was about to become a crucible in which the true nature of humanity, both its darkness and its light, would be revealed. The night sky over Los Angeles had transformed into a hellish canvas of orange and black. The wildfire, now a monstrous force of nature, had breached the city limits and was devouring everything in its path. The affluent neighborhoods of Bel Air and Brentwood, once bastions of luxury and security, now stood on the brink of destruction. William Hartley stumbled along the smoke-choked road, one arm around his wife Chloe, the other clutching his daughter Isabella's hand. They had abandoned their car over an hour ago, joining the throng of desperate evacuees fleeing on foot. The air was thick with ash and embers, making each breath a struggle. "Daddy?" Isabella whimpered, her voice muffled by the damp cloth covering her face. "I can't walk anymore, I'm so tired." William scooped her up, ignoring the burning in his muscles. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're almost there. Just a little further." But as they crested a hill, their hearts sank. The shopping center they had been aiming for was already engulfed in flames, black smoke billowing from its roof. Around them, other evacuees let out cries of despair. "Oh God, Will," Chloe choked out, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" Before William could respond, a deafening roar filled the air. The fire had reached a nearby gas station, and the resulting explosion sent a fireball rocketing into the sky. The crowd scattered in panic, people screaming and pushing in their desperation to escape. In the chaos, William felt Isabella's hand slip from his grasp. "Isabella!" he shouted, spinning around frantically. But the smoke was too thick, the panic too overwhelming. His daughter had vanished into the fleeing crowd. Miles away, in the heart of the burning city, John and Alex were making their way back to the warehouse shelter. The boy they had rescued, along with his dog, was safely reunited with his mother, but the journey had taken its toll. John's lungs burned with every breath, and his injured shoulder throbbed relentlessly. As they approached the warehouse, they saw Maria standing outside, waving urgently. "John, Alex, thank God you're back," she cried, her voice hoarse from the smoke. "We've got trouble, big trouble." Inside the warehouse, chaos reigned. The shelter was overcrowded, resources were stretched thin, and tensions were running high. A group of men were arguing loudly, their voices tinged with panic and aggression. "We can't stay here," one man shouted. "This place will be an oven if the fire reaches us." Another man pushed forward, his face red with anger. "And where do you suggest we go, genius? It's hell out there." John stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. "Enough. Fighting amongst ourselves won't solve anything. We need to stick together if we're going to survive this." The men fell silent, somewhat chastened by John's authoritative presence. But the tension in the air remained palpable. A young woman approached John, her eyes wide with fear. "Is it true?" she asked. "Is the fire in Bel Air now?" John nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so. The whole city's burning. Rich, poor, fire doesn't discriminate." As he spoke those words, a realization hit him. The fire didn't discriminate, but he could. He had the knowledge, the skills to help, and right now there were people, regardless of their wealth or status, who needed that help. John turned to Alex, his decision made. "I'm going back out there. There might be people trapped in those big houses, people who don't know the area like we do. I can't just sit here and do nothing." Alex looked at him in disbelief. "John, that's crazy. You barely made it back here. Your shoulder." "My shoulder's fine," John cut him off, even as a jolt of pain shot through the injured joint. "Look, I know it's risky, but if there's even a chance I can help." Maria stepped forward, placing a weathered hand on John's arm. You have a good heart, mihijo, but you can't save everyone. John smiled sadly. Maybe not, but I can try to save someone. With that, John gathered what supplies he could and prepared to head back out into the inferno. As he reached the warehouse door, he turned back to address the group. Stay together, look out for each other. This fire might take our homes, but it doesn't have to take our humanity. We're stronger together. With those words, John stepped out into the smoke-filled night. The roar of the approaching fire a constant reminder of the danger he was walking into. As John made his way through the burning city towards Bel Air, the scene around him was apocalyptic. Cars abandoned in the middle of the street, their metal twisted and blackened by the heat. Trees, once lush and green, now skeletal figures wreathed in flame. The air was thick with smoke and ash, making visibility poor and breathing difficult. Despite the hellish conditions, John pressed on. His years on the streets had honed his survival instincts, and he navigated the burning city with a mix of caution and determination. As he approached Bel Air, the true scale of the destruction became apparent. Mansions that had once stood as symbols of wealth and success were now reduced to smoldering ruins. Suddenly, a sound caught John's attention, a child's cry, barely audible over the roar of the flames. He zeroed in on the sound, following it to a partially collapsed mansion. "Hello?" John called out, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "Is anyone there? Help! Please help me!" The voice was small, terrified. A little girl. John's heart raced. Without hesitation, he began to search for a way into the burning structure. The main entrance was blocked by fallen debris, but he spotted a broken window on the ground floor. Ignoring the searing heat and the protest of his injured shoulder, John climbed through the window. Inside, the smoke was even thicker, forcing him to crouch low to the ground where the air was clearer. "Keep calling out," he shouted. "I'm coming to get you." Following the sound of the child's voice, John made his way through the burning house. He found her in what must have been a palatial living room, now a hellscape of flames and smoke. The girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, was huddled beneath an ornate grand piano, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "It's okay," John said softly, kneeling down to her level. "I'm here to help. What's your name?" Isabella," the girl whimpered. "I lost my mom and dad. I'm scared." "It's all right to be scared, Isabella," John replied, his voice gentle despite the chaos around them. "But I'm going to get you out of here, okay? Can you be brave for me?" Isabella nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but also a glimmer of hope. John scooped her up in his arms, wincing as his injured shoulder protested. "Hold on tight," he instructed, "and keep your face buried in my shirt. It'll help with the smoke." With Isabella securely in his arms, John began the perilous journey back through the burning mansion. The fire had spread rapidly, and paths that had been clear minutes ago were now impassable. The heat was intense, the smoke thicker than ever. John's lungs burned, his eyes watered, but he pressed on. He could feel Isabella trembling in his arms, her small body racked with coughs. They had to get out, and fast. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the broken window. With a final surge of strength, John lifted Isabella through the opening before clambering out himself. They collapsed on the lawn, gasping for air. John quickly checked Isabella for injuries, relieved to find nothing more serious than some minor burns and smoke inhalation. "You did great, Isabella," he said, managing a smile despite his exhaustion. "You were very brave." As they sat there, catching their breath, a commotion down the street caught their attention. A couple was running towards them, their faces a mix of desperation and hope. "Isabella!" the woman cried out. "Oh my God, Isabella! Mommy, Daddy!" Isabella scrambled to her feet, running towards her parents. John watched as the family reunited, feeling a bittersweet ache in his chest. He thought of Emma, wondering if she ever thought of him, if she missed him as much as he missed her. William and Chloe Hartley embraced their daughter, tears streaming down their ash-streaked faces. After a moment, William looked up, his eyes locking with John's. "You!" he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved our daughter. How can we ever thank you?" John slowly got to his feet, suddenly very aware of his ragged appearance. "No need for thanks," he said gruffly. "Anyone would have done the same." But as the Hartleys looked at this man, dirty, injured, clearly homeless, they realized that wasn't true. Not everyone would have risked their life to save a stranger's child. "What's your name?" Chloe asked, still clutching Isabella tightly. John Reeves." William stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Reeves, I'm William Hartley. This is my wife Chloe and our daughter Isabella. You've given us back our world. Please let us help you, whatever you need, money, a job, anything." John hesitated, looking at the offered hand. For a moment he saw a glimpse of a different life, one with stability, with purpose. But before he could respond, a loud crack split the air. A burning tree branch had fallen, blocking the road. "We need to get out of here," John said urgently. "This whole area is about to go up." William nodded, scooping up Isabella. "Our car is gone. Do you know a safe way out?" John thought quickly, drawing on his knowledge of the city streets. "There's a fire station about a mile south of here. If we can make it there, they'll have transportation." As they began their treacherous journey through the burning neighborhood, John found himself in an unfamiliar role, guide and protector to this wealthy family. The Hartleys, for their part, looked to him with a mixture of gratitude and newfound respect. They made slow progress, the smoke and heat making every step a challenge. John kept them moving, his years of survival on the streets now serving a greater purpose. He helped Chloe over fallen debris, pointed out safer paths, and even carried Isabella when the girl grew too tired to walk. As they walked, William couldn't help but study the man who had saved his daughter. Despite his ragged appearance, there was a quiet strength about John, a dignity that shone through the grime and exhaustion. "You seem to know your way around," William commented during a brief rest. John nodded. "Used to work construction all over the city. Knew these streets when they were still being built." "What happened?" Chloe asked gently. John was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "Life happened. An accident. Lost my job, my home, my family. Been on the streets ever since." The Hartleys exchanged a look, a silent communication born of years together. In that moment, they both realized that this man, this hero, had been invisible to people like them for far too long. As they neared the fire station, the sound of sirens pierced the air. A fire truck was approaching, its lights cutting through the smoky haze. John flagged it down, explaining the situation to the firefighters. As the Hartleys were loaded into the truck, William turned to John. "Come with us," he said urgently. "Please, let us help you." John hesitated, looking back at the burning city. He thought of the people in the warehouse, of others who might still need help. "There might be others out there," he said. "I should go back, see if I can help." William gripped his arm. "John, you've done enough, more than enough. Please, let us repay you. Let us help you rebuild your life." For a moment, John stood on the precipice of decision. Behind him lay the life he had known, harsh, unforgiving, but familiar. Ahead, a chance at something new, something he had thought lost forever. The fire roared in the distance, a reminder of the chaos that had brought them to this point. But in that chaos, a spark of hope had ignited. John looked at the Hartleys, at Isabella's grateful smile, at William and Chloe's earnest expressions, and made his choice. With a nod, John climbed into the fire truck. As they drove away from the inferno, leaving behind the world he had known, John felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Fear of the unknown, certainly, but also, for the first time in years, a flicker of hope. The fire that had threatened to destroy everything had also, in its own way, forged an unlikely connection. As Los Angeles burned behind them, John Reeves and the Hartley family headed towards an uncertain future, one that, against all odds, they would face together. The city would rebuild, as cities always do. But for John, the rebuilding had already begun. From the ashes of his old life, something new was emerging, something unexpected, something that felt, despite everything, like a second chance. As the fire truck wound its way through the smoky streets, John looked out at the burning city. He thought of the people he had left behind, Maria, Alex, and the others at the warehouse. He silently vowed to find a way to help them, too. This wasn't just about saving himself anymore. It was about using this second chance to make a difference. Isabella, exhausted from the ordeal, had fallen asleep in her mother's arms. John watched the family, feeling a bittersweet ache in his chest. He thought of Emma, wondering if she was safe, if she ever thought of him. Maybe, just maybe, this new chapter would bring him closer to reconnecting with her. William noticed John's pensive expression. "What are you thinking about, John?" John turned to him, his voice rough with emotion. "About second chances, and about how sometimes it takes losing everything to find out what really matters." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Well, you've given us a second chance with our daughter, and we intend to make sure you get your second chance too." As the fire truck made its way out of the danger zone, John felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in years, he felt ready to face those challenges. The fire that had threatened to consume Los Angeles had changed everything. It had erased the lines between rich and poor, between the forgotten and the privileged. In its wake, it left not just destruction, but the possibility of renewal. As they drove into the smoky dawn, John Reeves, once invisible, now a hero, felt the first stirrings of a new chapter beginning. The City of Angels had burned, but from its ashes, an unlikely redemption story was about to unfold. The days following the devastating wildfire were a blur of activity and emotion for John Reeves. The Hartley family, true to their word, had taken him under their wing, providing him with immediate necessities and a place to stay in their secondary home in Santa Monica, which had thankfully been spared from the fire. John sat on the edge of a plush bed in the guest room, his calloused hands running over the soft cotton sheets. The contrast between this luxury and the hard concrete he had grown accustomed to was jarring. He felt out of place, like an intruder in a world he no longer belonged to. A soft knock on the door roused him from his thoughts. "John, may I come in?" It was Chloe's voice, gentle and hesitant. "Sure," John replied, his voice gruff from disuse. Chloe entered, carrying a tray with a steaming mug of coffee and some toast. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. John nodded his thanks, unable to meet her eyes. The kindness of the Hartleys was overwhelming, and he didn't quite know how to handle it. "John," Chloe began, sitting down in a nearby chair, "William and I have been talking. We want to help you get back on your feet. Whatever you need, job training, housing, medical care, we'll take care of it." John's first instinct was to refuse. He had been on his own for so long, the idea of accepting help felt almost like admitting defeat. But as he looked at Chloe's earnest expression, he realized that perhaps it was time to swallow his pride. I appreciate that," he said slowly, "but I don't want charity. I need to earn my way." Chloe nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course. William has some ideas about that. When you're ready, he'd like to talk to you about a project he's been considering." Over the next few days, John gradually began to acclimate to his new surroundings. He insisted on helping around the house, unable to sit idle. The Hartleys watched with a mixture of admiration and sadness as John threw himself into tasks with the intensity of a man trying to prove his worth. One evening, about a week after the fire, William approached John as he was finishing up some yard work. "John, do you have a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." They sat on the patio, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, reminiscent of the fire that had brought them together. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the fire," William began, "about how fragile our lives are, how quickly everything can change, and about the people like yourself who've fallen through the cracks of society." John listened silently, wondering where this was going. "I want to start a foundation," William continued, "one that focuses on helping the homeless in Los Angeles rebuild their lives. Job training, housing assistance, mental health support, a comprehensive program to give people a real chance at a fresh start." He paused, looking directly at John. "And I want you to help me build it." John was stunned. "Me? But I don't know anything about running a foundation." William smiled. "You know more than you think. You've lived it, John. You understand the challenges in a way that I never could. Your experience, your insight, they're invaluable." For a long moment, John was silent, processing the offer. It was more than just a job. It was an opportunity to make a real difference, to help people who were in the same situation he had been in. I'd be honored," John finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to do this right. I'll need to learn a lot." William clapped him on the shoulder. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. We'll figure it out together." Over the next few months, John threw himself into the project with a dedication that surprised even himself. He worked closely with William, attending meetings with city officials, social workers, and other experts in the field. His first-hand experience proved invaluable in shaping the Foundation's programs, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. John struggled with the transition back into normal life. The soft beds and regular meals were a luxury he had almost forgotten, and he often found himself unable to sleep, plagued by memories of his time on the streets. One night, unable to rest, John wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water. He found Isabella there, sitting at the counter with a bowl of ice cream. Couldn't sleep either, huh? John asked, grabbing a glass from the cupboard. Isabella shook her head. I keep having bad dreams about the fire, she admitted quietly. John sat down next to her, his heart aching for the child's fear. You know, it's okay to be scared, he said gently. What you went through was really tough, but you're safe now. Isabella looked up at him, her eyes wide. You must be really brave. You're not scared of anything. John chuckled softly. Oh, I get scared too, everyone does. But you know what? Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared. They sat in companionable silence for a while, John sipping his water and Isabella finishing her ice cream. It was a small moment, but for John, it was a step towards healing, towards feeling like part of a family again. As the weeks turned into months, John's confidence grew. He began leading outreach efforts, connecting with the homeless community he had once been a part of. Many were skeptical at first, seeing him as a sellout, but John's sincerity and understanding gradually won them over. One day, as John was leaving a shelter after a particularly successful outreach session, he heard a familiar voice call his name. John? John Reeves, is that you? He turned to see Maria, the elderly woman from the warehouse during the fire. Her face lit up with recognition and joy. Maria, John exclaimed, embracing the old woman. I've been looking for you. Are you okay? What happened after the fire? Maria's eyes twinkled. Oh, I'm fine, mijijo. Thanks to you, we all made it out safely. But look at you. You're a changed man. John smiled, a bit embarrassed. I've been given a second chance, Maria, and I'm trying to make the most of it. As they caught up, John felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He realized how far he had come, but also how much of himself he had rediscovered in the process. Back at the Hartley home, John shared his encounter with William and Chloe over dinner. I want to do more, he said, his voice filled with determination. There are so many people out there who just need a chance like the one you gave me. William nodded thoughtfully. What did you have in mind? A job program, John replied. Not just training, but actual jobs. Maybe we could partner with local businesses, create positions specifically for people trying to get back on their feet. Chloe smiled warmly. That's a wonderful idea, John. You've come so far in such a short time. John felt a lump form in his throat at her words. I couldn't have done it without your support, he said softly. As the foundation grew and evolved, so did John. He began to see himself not as a charity case, but as a valuable member of the team, someone with unique insights and abilities. The confidence he gained spilled over into other areas of his life. One evening, as John was reviewing some proposals in the study, William entered with a serious expression on his face. John, there's something I need to talk to you about, he began hesitantly. John felt a flutter of anxiety in his chest. Had he done something wrong? Was this all about to come crashing down? William took a deep breath. I've been doing some research, trying to locate your daughter, Emma. John froze, his heart pounding. He had thought about Emma every day, but the pain of their separation had been too much to bear. He had never dared to hope. Did you find her? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. William nodded. She's a student at UCLA. And John, she's been looking for you too. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. John gripped the edge of the desk, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions, joy, fear, hope, regret. She wants to see you, William continued gently. If you're ready. John's mind raced. Was he ready? Could he face his daughter after all this time, after everything that had happened? But then he thought of all he had overcome in the past few months. If he could face the demons of his past and rebuild his life, surely he could face his daughter. Yes, John said, his voice stronger now. Yes, I want to see her. The reunion was set for the following weekend. John spent the days leading up to it in a state of nervous anticipation. He threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the swirling emotions. On the day of the meeting, John stood in front of the mirror, hardly recognizing the man staring back at him. Gone was the unkempt beard and haunted eyes. In their place was a man who, while still bearing the marks of his struggles, stood tall with a sense of purpose. The Hartleys had offered to host the reunion at their home, providing a neutral, comfortable space. As the doorbell rang, John felt his heart leap into his throat. And then there she was, Emma, his little girl, now a young woman. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, with a choked sob, Emma flung herself into her father's arms. "Dad," she cried, clinging to him. "I thought I'd lost you forever." John held her tight, his own tears flowing freely. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry." They talked for hours, John sharing the story of his downfall and redemption, Emma filling him in on her life. There were moments of pain and regret, but also laughter and hope. "I want to be part of your life again," John said earnestly. "If you'll have me." Emma squeezed his hand. "Dad, I never stopped wanting that. We have a lot of time to make up for." As Emma was leaving, she paused at the door. "Dad, I'm proud of you, for getting help, for turning things around. It couldn't have been easy." John felt a warmth spread through his chest. "It wasn't, but having a second chance at being your father, that makes it all worth it." That night, as John lay in bed reflecting on the day, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He thought about the long journey that had brought him to this point. The pain, the struggles, but also the unexpected kindness and opportunities. He thought about the foundation and all the people they were helping. He thought about the Hartleys, who had seen value in him when he couldn't see it in himself. And he thought about Emma and the chance to rebuild their relationship. John realized that his perspective had shifted dramatically. Where once he saw only despair and hopelessness, he now saw possibilities. Where he once felt shame, he now felt pride in how far he had come. The next morning, John woke up early, energized and ready to face the day. As he sipped his coffee on the patio watching the sunrise, William joined him. "How are you feeling after yesterday?" William asked, genuine concern in his voice. John smiled, a real, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. "Grateful," he said simply. "For everything. For this chance to make things right." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. "You know, John, when we first offered to help you, it was out of gratitude for saving Isabella. But now you're family. You've brought so much to our lives, to this foundation. I hope you know that." John felt a lump form in his throat. "I do," he said softly, "and I want you to know that I'm going to keep working hard, keep trying to pay it forward." "I know you will," William replied. "Now, what do you say we head to the office? We've got a lot of work to do." As they drove to the Foundation's headquarters, John looked out at the city passing by. Los Angeles was still rebuilding from the fire, but signs of recovery were everywhere. It struck him as a fitting metaphor for his own life. The day ahead would be busy. Meetings with city officials, program planning, outreach coordination. But John was ready for it all. He had found his purpose, reconnected with his daughter, and discovered a new family in the Hartleys. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and difficult days. But John Reeves was no longer the broken man who had sat on that street corner all those months ago. He was stronger now, wiser, and filled with a determination to make the most of his second chance. As they pulled up to the office, John took a deep breath, ready to face whatever the day might bring. He was no longer just surviving. He was living, growing, and making a difference. And for the first time in years, he was truly looking forward to what the future might hold. The Los Angeles sun beat down on the freshly painted sign, Hartley Reeves Foundation for New Beginnings. John stood back, admiring the simple yet powerful statement it made. 2 years had passed since the wildfire that had changed everything, and in that time the foundation had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" William said, coming to stand beside John. John nodded, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come." "We?" William chuckled. "John, this is your vision. Chloe and I may have provided the initial resources, but you're the heart and soul of this place." Before John could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. "Dad, don't forget, dinner at my place tonight. I've got big news." John smiled, still marveling at how natural it felt to be back in his daughter's life. Their relationship had grown stronger over the past 2 years, healing old wounds and creating new memories. As they walked into the Foundation's headquarters, John was greeted by a flurry of activity. The place was buzzing with energy, volunteers coordinating outreach programs, former homeless individuals now employed as peer counselors, and a team of social workers and job trainers working tirelessly to help people rebuild their lives. "John," called out Maria, now the Foundation's community liaison, "we've got a situation at the new housing complex. Can you come take a look?" John nodded, immediately switching into problem-solving mode. The new housing complex had been his most ambitious project yet, a mixed-income development designed to provide affordable housing while fostering a sense of community among residents from all walks of life. As John and Maria made their way to the complex, she filled him in on the details. A group of local residents was protesting the presence of formerly homeless individuals in their neighborhood, citing concerns about safety and property values. "They're demanding we shut down the complex," Maria explained, her voice tight with worry. "They've even got the local news involved." John's jaw clenched. This was exactly the kind of prejudice and misunderstanding he had been working to overcome. As they pulled up to the complex, he could see a crowd gathered, holding signs and chanting. Taking a deep breath, John stepped out of the car. He could see the news vans, cameras already rolling. For a moment, he felt a flicker of his old insecurity, the shame of being seen as less than, the fear of judgment. But he pushed it aside. He wasn't that man anymore. "Mr. Reeves," a reporter called out, shoving a microphone in his face. "What do you have to say about the concerns of the local residents? Are you putting their safety at risk by bringing homeless people into their neighborhood?" John looked directly into the camera, his voice steady and confident. "What I have to say is this. Every person in this complex, regardless of their background, is a valuable member of our community. They're not homeless people. They're people who have faced challenges and are working hard to rebuild their lives. And isn't that what we all want? A chance to build a better life?" He turned to address the crowd, his voice rising with passion. "I know you're scared. Change is always frightening, but I've been where these folks have been. I've lived on the streets, felt invisible and hopeless, and I'm standing here today because someone gave me a chance. That's all we're doing here, giving people a chance." A murmur ran through the crowd. John could see some people shifting uncomfortably, others nodding in agreement. "Why should we trust you?" a man shouted from the back. "How do we know this isn't just some feel-good project that'll fall apart and leave us dealing with the consequences?" John smiled, recognizing the fear behind the anger. "That's a fair question, and I'll answer it by inviting every single one of you to come inside. Meet your new neighbors, hear their stories, see the work we're doing. And if after that you still have concerns, my door is always open." For a moment there was silence. Then, slowly, people began to move forward. John led them into the complex, introducing them to residents, showing them the job training facilities, the community garden, the childcare center. As the tour progressed, John could see the tension easing. People were talking, asking questions, even laughing together. By the time they reached the community center, the atmosphere had completely transformed. A young woman stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. I want to apologize," she said, her voice shaking. "I was one of the loudest voices against this place, but seeing it now, meeting everyone, I was wrong, I'm sorry." John felt a lump form in his throat. This was why he did this work, for moments like these, when minds and hearts opened to new possibilities. As the crowd dispersed, many staying behind to chat with their new neighbors, William approached John, a broad smile on his face. "That was incredible, John," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You turned a potential disaster into a triumph." John shook his head, still processing what had just happened. "I just spoke from the heart. These people, this place, it's personal for me. It's about showing everyone that second chances are possible." As they walked back to the car, John's phone buzzed again. It was another text from Emma. "Dad, I saw you on the news just now. You were amazing. Can't wait to see you tonight." John smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. He had faced one of his biggest fears, being in the public eye, speaking about his past, and had come out stronger for it. But as he was about to get into the car, a commotion near the entrance of the complex caught his attention. A man was yelling, his face red with anger, as security tried to calm him down. "That's Derek Thompson," Maria said, her voice low. "He's been causing trouble since he moved in last month, refuses to participate in the programs, gets into fights with other residents. We've been trying to work with him, but..." John nodded, understanding the challenge. Derek represented the kind of resident that could potentially undermine everything they had built. But John also saw something familiar in the man's anger, a reflection of his own pain and fear from years ago. "I'll handle this," John said, already moving towards Derek. As John approached, he could hear Derek's angry tirade. "This place is a joke. You can't fix people like us. We're broken, don't you get it?" "Is that what you really believe, Derek?" John asked calmly, stepping into the man's line of sight. "Or is that just what you've been told so many times that you've started to believe it?" Derek turned, his eyes narrowing as he recognized John. "Oh, look who it is. The big success story. Come to show us all how it's done." John didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he simply said, "Walk with me, Derek." Surprised by the calm request, Derek hesitated, then grudgingly fell into step beside John. They walked in silence for a few moments, moving away from the crowd. Finally, John spoke. "You know, 2 years ago I was sitting on a street corner, convinced that my life was over, that I was too broken, too far gone to ever come back." Derek scoffed, but John could see he was listening. "The thing is, Derek, being broken isn't the end of the story, it's just a part of it. The question is, what do you want the next part to be?" Derek was quiet for a long moment, his anger seeming to deflate. "I don't know how to be anything else," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been angry for so long I don't know who I am without it." John nodded, understanding all too well. "That's okay. Figuring that out is part of the journey. But you don't have to do it alone. That's what this place is about, supporting each other as we all try to rebuild." As they talked, John could see Derek's defenses slowly lowering. By the time they made it back to the main building, Derek had agreed to give the program another try. "It won't be easy," John warned him. "There will be days when you want to give up, but I promise you it's worth it." Derek nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes for the first time. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves, for not giving up on me." As Derek walked away, William approached, having watched the interaction from afar. "You never cease to amaze me, John. The way you connect with people, the way you inspire change, it's remarkable." John smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment wash over him. "It's because I've been where they are. I know the darkness, but I also know the way out." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, problem-solving and planning. By the time John left the office, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. As he drove to Emma's apartment, John reflected on the day's events. The protest, the tour, the conversation with Derek, each had reinforced his belief in the work they were doing. But more than that, each had shown him how far he had come. Emma greeted him with a warm hug when he arrived. "Dad, I saw you on the news earlier. You were incredible." John chuckled, still a bit embarrassed by the attention. "Just doing my job, sweetheart. Now, what's this big news you mentioned?" Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, remember that grant application I submitted for my community health project?" John nodded, recalling how passionate Emma had been about her idea to bring mobile health clinics to underserved areas. "I got it," Emma exclaimed. "Full funding for 2 years." John swept his daughter up in a bear hug, his heart swelling with pride. "That's amazing, Emma. I'm so proud of you." As they sat down to dinner, Emma filled him in on the details of her project. John listened, marveling at his daughter's compassion and drive. She had inherited his desire to make a difference, but had found her own unique path to do so. "I know," Emma said, her voice growing serious. "I don't think I would have had the courage to pursue this if it wasn't for you, Dad." John looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Emma reached across the table, taking his hand. "Watching you rebuild your life, seeing how you've helped so many people, it inspired me. It showed me that one person really can make a difference." John felt tears prick at his eyes. "Oh, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've always had that power inside you. I'm just grateful I get to see you use it." As they continued talking, John's phone buzzed. It was a text from William. "John, we need you back at the foundation. Emergency situation." John frowned, showing the message to Emma. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I have to go." Emma nodded, understanding. "Go, Dad. People need you." When John arrived back at the foundation, he found the place in chaos. A fire had broken out at one of their shelters, forcing an evacuation. Dozens of people were now gathered in the foundation's main hall, scared and uncertain. "What happened?" John asked William as he rushed in. "Electrical fire," William explained grimly. "Everyone got out safely, but the shelter's uninhabitable. We need to find places for everyone, and fast." John nodded, his mind already racing. This was a crisis, yes, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to show that their community could come together in times of need. He grabbed a chair, standing on it to address the crowd. "Everyone, please, may I have your attention?" The room gradually fell silent, all eyes turning to John. "I know you're scared and unsure right now, but I want you to know that you're not alone. This foundation, this community, we're all here for you." He turned to William. "Call the housing complex. See how many units we can open up immediately. To Maria, he said, contact our network of volunteers. We need supplies, clothes, toiletries, everything. To the crowd, he continued, if any of you have skills, construction, electrical work, anything, we could use your help in assessing and repairing the shelter. As he spoke, John could see people straightening up, fear giving way to determination. They weren't just victims of circumstance anymore, they were part of the solution. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. John moved from task to task, coordinating efforts, comforting those who were struggling, and problem-solving on the fly. He drew on every skill he had learned over the past 2 years, from crisis management to community organizing. As dawn broke, John stood outside the foundation, watching as the last of the shelter residents were settled into temporary housing. He was exhausted, but filled with a deep sense of satisfaction. William joined him, looking equally tired but proud. You know, John, when I first had the idea for this foundation, I never imagined anything like this. You've turned it into so much more than just a charity. You've built a real community. John nodded, taking in the scene before him. People who had been strangers hours ago were now hugging, exchanging phone numbers, promising to stay in touch. The crisis had brought out the best in everyone. It's not just me, William, John said. It's all of us. Every person who's come through those doors has contributed to building this community. As they stood there, John spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Derek Thompson. The man who had been so angry and resistant just yesterday was now helping an elderly woman with her bags, a look of quiet determination on his face. Derek caught John's eye and nodded, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. In that moment, John saw his own journey reflected in Derek's eyes, the struggle, the resistance, and finally, the acceptance and desire to change. Just then, John's phone rang. It was Emma. Dad, I saw the news about the fire. Are you okay? Do you need any help? John smiled, warmed by his daughter's concern. I'm fine, sweetheart. In fact, I think we've got everything under control here. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Emma said, Dad, I've been thinking. My project, the mobile health clinics. What if we partnered with the foundation? We could provide healthcare services to your residents, maybe even set up a permanent clinic at the housing complex. John felt a surge of emotion. His daughter, already looking for ways to contribute, to be part of this community he had built. Emma, that's an incredible idea. Let's definitely talk about it. As he hung up, John looked out at the bustling activity around him. From the ashes of a fire, new connections were being forged, new possibilities emerging. He thought back to that night 2 years ago, when he had run into a burning building to save a little girl. He had thought then that it was the most important thing he would ever do, but now he realized that was just the beginning. Every day since then had been about saving people, not from fires, but from despair, from hopelessness, from the belief that they were beyond help. And in saving others, he had saved himself. As the sun rose higher in the sky, painting the city in a warm glow, John Reeves stood tall, no longer a man broken by circumstance, but a leader forged by adversity and compassion. The journey had been long and difficult, but standing here, surrounded by the community he had helped build, John knew one thing for certain: the best was yet to come. In the weeks following the shelter fire, Los Angeles buzzed with a renewed sense of community spirit. The Hartley Reeves Foundation had become the epicenter of a movement, inspiring people from all walks of life to come together and make a difference. John found himself at the heart of it all, his days a whirlwind of activity, his nights filled with a sense of purpose he had once thought lost forever. One sunny afternoon, John stood on the rooftop of the newly renovated shelter, surveying the city sprawled out before him. The shelter, once a burned-out husk, now stood as a symbol of resilience and hope. Its walls were adorned with vibrant murals painted by local artists, many of whom had once been homeless themselves. The building hummed with life, housing not just those in need of a place to stay, but also job training programs, counseling services, and a community kitchen. Quite a view, isn't it? William's voice came from behind him. John turned, smiling at his friend and partner. It never gets old, he replied. Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come. William joined him at the railing, his eyes scanning the horizon. You know, when I first offered to help you after the wildfire, I never imagined it would lead to all this. You've turned a simple act of gratitude into a movement, John. John shook his head modestly. We've done this together, William. all of us. As they stood there taking in the view, John's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, don't forget, dinner at 7. I've got a surprise for you." A warm smile spread across John's face. His relationship with Emma had blossomed over the past months, growing stronger with each passing day. They had moved beyond the awkwardness of their initial reunion, finding a new dynamic that honored their shared past while embracing their evolving present. "Emma?" William asked, noticing John's expression. John nodded. "She's got some sort of surprise planned for tonight. Knowing her, it could be anything from a new recipe she's trying out to a major life announcement." William chuckled. "She's certainly her father's daughter, always full of surprises." As they made their way back downstairs, they passed through the bustling common area. John paused to chat with residents and volunteers, his easy manner and genuine interest in their lives evident in every interaction. He had become more than just the face of the foundation. He was a friend, a mentor, a source of unwavering support. "Mr. Reeves," a voice called out. John turned to see Derek Thompson approaching, a wide smile on his face. "I just wanted to let you know, I got the job." John's face lit up. "Derek, that's fantastic, the construction company." Derek nodded enthusiastically. "Yep, they were impressed with the work I did here during the renovation. Said they could use someone with my drive and experience." John pulled Derek into a quick hug. "I'm so proud of you, man. You've come a long way." As Derek walked away, visibly buoyed by the exchange, William turned to John. "You know, moments like that never get old. Seeing people turn their lives around, find their purpose." John nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "No, they don't. It's what keeps me going, even on the tough days." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and problem-solving sessions. By the time John left the foundation, the sun was already beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. As he drove to Emma's apartment, John found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought of the man he had been just a few years ago, broken, hopeless, convinced that his life was over. If someone had told that man that he would one day be running a successful foundation, reconnecting with his daughter, and making a real difference in people's lives, he would have laughed in disbelief. Emma greeted him at the door with a warm hug. "Dad, come in. Dinner's almost ready." As John stepped into the apartment, a familiar scent hit him. "Is that—" he began, his voice trailing off in disbelief. Emma grinned. "Yep, Grandma's famous pot roast. I found her old recipe book when I was going through some of Mom's things. Thought you might appreciate a taste of home." John felt a wave of emotion wash over him. His mother's pot roast had been a staple of his childhood, a comfort food that had seen him through many tough times. The fact that Emma had gone to the trouble of recreating it touched him deeply. As they sat down to eat, John couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. The awkwardness of their early reunions had given way to a comfortable familiarity, a relationship built on shared experiences and mutual respect. "So," John said, taking a bite of the pot roast, which was remarkably close to his mother's version, "what's this surprise you mentioned?" Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, remember how we talked about partnering my mobile health clinic project with the foundation?" John nodded, recalling their conversation after the shelter fire. "Well, I've been doing some research, and I think I've found a way to make it work on an even bigger scale," Emma continued. "I've been in talks with the city health department, and they're interested in piloting the program. If it goes well, we could potentially roll it out citywide." John felt a surge of pride. "Emma, that's incredible. I always knew you were destined for great things, but this could change so many lives." Emma reached across the table, squeezing her father's hand. "I learned from the best, Dad. Watching you these past few months, seeing how you've turned your life around and helped so many people, it's been inspiring. You've shown me what's possible when you really commit to making a difference." John felt tears prick at his eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you've always had that drive in you. I'm just grateful I get to see it in action now." As they continued their meal, catching up on the smaller details of their lives, John felt a sense of contentment wash over him. This, he realized, was what he had been missing all those years on the streets. Not just a roof over his head or food in his stomach, but this sense of connection, of belonging, of being part of something larger than himself. After dinner, as they sat on Emma's small balcony watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Emma broached a subject that had been hanging between them for some time. "Dad," she began hesitantly. "Have you thought any more about reaching out to Mom?" John sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I have," he admitted. "It's complicated." Emma nodded understandingly. "I know, but she asks about you, when we talk. I think she regrets how things ended." John was quiet for a long moment, his mind drifting back to those dark days after his accident. The arguments, the pain, the final slam of the door as Charlotte left with Emma in tow. "I don't hold any grudges," he said finally. "What happened between your mother and me? It was a difficult time for both of us. I made mistakes, she made mistakes, but that's in the past now." Emma leaned her head on her father's shoulder, a gesture reminiscent of her childhood. I think it might be good for both of you to talk, to find some closure if nothing else." John nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. I'll think about it." As John drove home that night, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The idea of reaching out to Charlotte after all this time was daunting, but Emma was right. Perhaps it was time to finally close that chapter of his life. The next morning, John arrived at the foundation earlier than usual, his conversation with Emma still weighing on his mind. As he walked through the doors, he was greeted by the familiar buzz of activity, volunteers preparing for the day, residents heading out to job interviews or training programs, the smell of coffee wafting from the community kitchen. Maria intercepted him as he made his way to his office. "John, we've got a situation. The City Council is reconsidering their support for the mixed-income housing project. They're calling for a public hearing next week." John felt a flicker of frustration, but pushed it aside. Challenges like this were part of the job, and he had learned to face them head-on. "All right, let's get the team together. We'll need to prepare our presentation, gather testimonials from residents. This project is too important to let it fall through." As he threw himself into the preparations for the hearing, John found his thoughts drifting back to Charlotte. It had been easier in a way to think of her as part of his past life, a chapter closed and left behind. But Emma's words had stirred something in him, a curiosity perhaps about the woman who had once been his partner in everything. During a lull in the day's activities, John found himself pulling out his phone, staring at Charlotte's number. Emma had given it to him months ago, but he had never found the courage to use it. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. John was about to hang up when suddenly he heard a familiar voice. "Hello? Charlotte?" John said, his voice catching slightly. It's John." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, "John, I didn't expect to hear from you." "I know," John replied. "I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. I've been talking with Emma, and I thought maybe it was time we talked." Another pause, this one filled with an electric tension. "Yes," Charlotte finally said. "Yes, I think you're right. Are you free for coffee sometime this week?" They arranged to meet at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between the foundation and Charlotte's office. As John hung up the phone, he felt a strange mix of anxiety and relief. Whatever happened, at least they were taking a step towards resolution. The day of the City Council hearing arrived before John knew it. He stood before the council members, his voice steady as he presented the case for the mixed-income housing project. He spoke of second chances, of the power of community, of the transformative effect of having a place to call home. "This project isn't just about providing housing," he concluded. "It's about building a community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their past or their economic status. It's about showing that when we come together, when we support one another, we all benefit." As he stepped back from the podium, John caught sight of a familiar face in the audience. Emma had come to support him, and beside her sat Charlotte. Their eyes met, and Charlotte gave him a small, encouraging nod. The council voted unanimously to continue their support for the project. As the room erupted in cheers and applause, John felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see William, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, John," William said. "You're changing this city one project at a time." As the crowd began to disperse, Emma and Charlotte made their way over. Emma threw her arms around her father, congratulating him enthusiastically. Then, somewhat awkwardly, John found himself face to face with Charlotte. "That was quite a speech," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. You've really found your calling, haven't you?" John nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "I have. It's been a long road, but I'm grateful for where it's led me." Charlotte's eyes softened. "John, I owe you an apology for how things ended between us, for not believing in you when you needed it most." John held up a hand. "Charlotte, it's okay, we both made mistakes. What matters is that we're here now trying to make things right." As they stood there, the years of pain and misunderstanding between them began to dissolve. They weren't the same people they had been during those dark days after John's accident. They had both grown, changed, found new paths in life. "I'm proud of you, John," Charlotte said softly, "for turning your life around, for all the good you're doing. And I'm glad Emma has you back in her life." John felt a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Charlotte. That means a lot." As they parted ways, promising to stay in touch, John felt a sense of closure he hadn't known he needed. He had faced his past, confronted the pain and regret, and come out the other side stronger for it. In the days that followed, John threw himself into his work with renewed energy. The Foundation's influence continued to grow, touching more lives, inspiring more change. John's story began to spread beyond Los Angeles, capturing national attention. He found himself invited to speak at conferences, consulted on policy decisions, held up as an example of the transformative power of second chances. But for John, the real satisfaction came from the small moments. Helping a resident prepare for a job interview, mediating a conflict between neighbors in the housing complex, seeing the pride in someone's eyes as they moved into their first stable home in years. One evening, as John was locking up the Foundation offices, he paused to look out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, reminiscent of the wildfire that had changed everything all those years ago. William joined him, following his gaze out over the cityscape. "Penny, for your thoughts?" John smiled, a sense of peace settling over him. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how much has changed." William nodded. "You know, when I first offered to help you after the fire, I thought I was just repaying a debt. I never imagined it would lead to all this." "Life has a funny way of surprising us," John replied. "I used to think my life was over, that I'd lost everything that mattered. But now I realize I was just at the beginning of a new chapter." As they stood there, watching the city transition from day to night, John reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. From a homeless man on the streets to a community leader making a real difference in people's lives. From a father estranged from his daughter to a man with a loving, supportive family. Not just Emma, but the entire community he had helped build. "You know," John said, turning to William, "I used to think that losing everything was the worst thing that could happen to a person. But now I see it differently. Sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of clearing the path for something better." William smiled, clapping John on the shoulder. "Well, my friend, I'd say you've certainly made the most of your clean slate." As they locked up and headed their separate ways, John felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him, for the second chance he'd been given, for the people who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, for the opportunity to make a difference in the world. He thought of Emma, of the pride in her eyes when she looked at him now. He thought of Charlotte and the peace they had found in forgiveness. He thought of William and Chloe, who had seen value in him when he was at his lowest. And he thought of all the people whose lives had been touched by the Foundation, the homeless individuals who had found hope, the volunteers who had discovered their own capacity for compassion, the community that had come together in ways he never could have imagined. As John drove home that night, the city lights twinkling around him like stars, he felt a sense of purpose and belonging that he had once thought lost forever. He had come full circle, from a man with nothing to lose to a man with everything to give. And as he looked to the future, John Reeves knew one thing for certain. The best was yet to come. 5 years had passed since the Hartley Reeves Foundation had first opened its doors, and Los Angeles was a city transformed. The change wasn't just in the skyline, where new mixed-income housing developments stood proudly alongside luxury apartments, or in the reduction of homelessness statistics. It was in the spirit of the city itself, a newfound sense of community, of possibility, of hope. John Reeves, now in his mid-50s, stood at the podium in front of City Hall, addressing a crowd that stretched as far as the eye could see. The occasion was the launch of a nationwide initiative inspired by the success of the Foundation's programs in Los Angeles. 5 years ago, John began, his voice strong and clear, I stood on these very steps, a man who had once been invisible to society, pleading for a chance to make a difference. Today I stand here not as an individual, but as part of a movement that believes in the power of second chances, in the strength of community, and in the unbreakable spirit of human resilience. In the front row, Emma beamed with pride. At 32, she had become a force in her own right, her mobile health clinics now a vital part of the city's healthcare system. Beside her sat William and Chloe Hartley, their hair a little grayer, but their eyes still bright with the passion that had first inspired them to help John all those years ago. This initiative, John continued, will bring the model we've developed here in Los Angeles to cities across the nation. But it's not just about providing housing or job training. It's about changing the way we see each other, about recognizing the inherent worth and potential in every human being, regardless of their circumstances. As John spoke, his eyes scanned the crowd, picking out familiar faces. There was Maria, now the director of community outreach for the foundation. Derek Thompson, once an angry and resistant resident, now a successful construction foreman and mentor to others in the program. And in the back, standing quietly but with unmistakable pride, was Charlotte. John's relationship with his ex-wife had evolved over the years into a friendship based on mutual respect and shared love for their daughter. While romantically incompatible, they had found a way to be part of each other's lives, supporting one another's endeavors and celebrating each other's successes. "When I was at my lowest," John said, his voice softening with emotion, "I believed that my story was over, that I had nothing left to give, and that the world had no place for me. But I was wrong. Every one of us has a story that's still being written, a potential that's waiting to be unlocked." He paused, looking out over the sea of faces, some bearing the marks of hard lives, others shining with the enthusiasm of youth, all united in this moment of shared purpose. Today, as we launch this initiative, we're not just expanding a program, we're declaring a belief in the power of compassion, in the strength of community, and in the ability of every person to rewrite their own story. As John concluded his speech to thunderous applause, he felt a sense of completion. The journey that had begun on that fiery night years ago, when he had run into a burning building to save a child, had led him here, not to an ending, but to a new beginning. Later that evening, as the sun set over the city, John found himself back where it all began, Figueroa Street, where he had once sat invisible and hopeless. The street had changed, as had the city around it, but there was something comfortingly familiar about the way the fading sunlight played on the buildings. "Dad?" Emma's voice pulled him from his reverie. She had insisted on accompanying him, understanding the significance of this moment. John turned to his daughter, marveling at the strong, compassionate woman she had become. "Just remembering," he said softly. "It's hard to believe how much has changed." Emma slipped her arm through his. "You changed it, Dad. You and everyone you inspired along the way." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the ebb and flow of city life around them. Then Emma spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You know, when I was younger, I used to be so angry about what happened, about losing you for those years. But now I can't help but think that maybe it all happened for a reason, that you had to lose everything to find your true purpose." John nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I think you might be right. It's a high price to pay, but I wouldn't change it. Not if it meant losing all this, losing the chance to make a difference." As they turned to leave, a young man approached them hesitantly. His clothes were ragged, his eyes bearing the haunted look of someone who had seen too much hardship. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you John Reeves?" John nodded, giving the man an encouraging smile. "I am. What's your name?" "Mike," the man replied. I heard your speech today. I've been on the streets for 2 years now, and I guess I just wanted to know if you really think someone like me could turn things around." John felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He saw in Mike's eyes the same despair, the same hopelessness he had once felt. Without hesitation, he placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Mike," he said gently, 5 years ago, I was sitting right here on this street, believing my life was over. Now look at me. It's not going to be easy, but yes, you can turn things around. And you don't have to do it alone." He pulled out a card, pressing it into Mike's hand. "Come by the foundation tomorrow. We'll get you started on a new chapter." As Mike walked away, hope visibly rekindled in his stance, John turned back to Emma. She was watching him with a mixture of pride and love that made his heart swell. "You never stop, do you?" she said, a smile playing on her lips. John shook his head. "How can I? Every person we help is a reminder of where I've been and how far I've come. It's a gift, Emma, a gift I can't help but pass on." As they walked back to the car, the city coming alive with nighttime energy around them, John felt a profound sense of peace. The man he had been, broken, hopeless, invisible, was a distant memory. In his place stood a man who had not only rebuilt his own life, but had dedicated himself to helping others do the same. The story that had begun in fire and desperation had transformed into one of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. And as John Reeves looked out over the city he had helped to change, he knew that this story, his story, the city's story, the story of every person who had found hope in the darkness, was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.